Zoom.
Oh, good. Thank you. I can see Gloria.
Help with this microphone.
I guess the first order is to call the October 20th, 2021 meeting of the Forsyth County Tourism Development Authority to order. And we have a question of attendance, Emily. Are we have a quorum?
Yes.
Awesome, awesome. First order of business is the meeting minutes from the board meeting in September, as well as the approval of the nominating committee meeting minutes from October 6th. Are there any questions or revisions? If not, is there a motion to accept those meeting minutes? Motion and a second. A second from CJ. All in favor of accepting the meeting minutes, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Or Gloria raises her hand. All right. Thank you for that. And we have a couple of action items. We have a couple of guests. So we have, and I know there's an action-packed discussion about some comparative financial analysis of us versus some other cities that was asked about for last meeting. So unless anybody has any questions of the chair, I'll pass it on to the president.
Actually, what we'll do is, Mr. Chairman, we'll pass it on to the nominating committee chair, Kelly Brown, for a report.
I'd like to recognize Kelly Brown.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. On October 6th, the nominating committee met to appoint a Forsyth County TDA chair and vice chair. During the meeting, there was a motion made to nominate Ms. Dana Lou Bryson as chair and for CJ to continue as vice chair. So I would like to make a motion to approve the appointment of Ms. Dana Lou Bryson as Forsyth County TDA chair and to reappoint Mr. CJ Johnson as Forsyth County TDA vice chair as recommended at the October 6, 2021 nominating committee meeting.
So we have a motion. We have a second from Gloria Wisenhunt. Any questions or comments? There's a motion on the floor. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any objection? Unfortunately, Dana couldn't join us today. She had a family commitment, but we've had a conversation with her and she's excited about taking the lead as our chairperson. So we voted and everybody said yes. Okay, good. Just want to make sure it's absolutely official for how I can come to November's meeting. All right, I appreciate the nominating committee. Kelly, thank you very much for helping us out in that. And then I'll turn it over to Rich.
Okay, there again, Mr. Chairman, I will be, what we're going to have is a marketing committee report. So I'd like the chair of the marketing committee, Mr. Baldwin, to give an update and report, please.
Thanks, Rich. I met recently with Marquita and Rich, and the topic was our website and also our targeted media agency agreements. Those are both expiring at the end of this month. And we do feel like there might be an opportunity to look at other vendors in this area and consider them, but there's certainly not an opportunity to make a change by the end of this month. So the things that will be coming up in the action item today involve extending our contracts with those folks for about 9 months. And at the same time, doing a search to see who might be out there. It's not really time to do a whole new website or to reinvent the wheel on this, but we do want to see if there's other agencies that might bring something more to the table. I don't believe we have an issue with our current agency, but this is an industry that changes a lot quickly and different companies offer different things and make their reputation in being particularly good in different areas of targeted media or in the web. So it would really be looking for a website developer, designer, maintenance provider, see what they might bring to the table, and put out a request for proposal to see what's out there. This doesn't mean we might not renew with our current, who is Knipe on the website side and Yum Yum on the targeted marketing side, but that we want to do an RFP and see what types of proposals that we get. You want to say anything more about that?
Well, we have a timeline that we'll go over with the marketing committee as it relates to the RFP, because it is a very extensive proposal that we're asking for a reply to with several companies. And again, we want the marketing committee to be an integral part of that review and selection process.
And I'll be glad to generally share what that timeline looks like. In early November, the marketing committee will meet and review the RFP, which Marquita has already been working on drafting, and also a proposed list of vendors that she's been working on. After marketing committee's looked at it, it'll go to legal to review the RFP. In early December, we would hope to release the RFP with a January 30th deadline. In early February, marketing committee would review and the proposals and recommend a top provider, hoping to bring it back here in March for a final decision and selection. And then in April and May, and that would be where we're extending the current agreements out to, we would start working on onboarding and transitioning to the new company. Or if we reworked our contract and received an RFP from the current provider, following through with that as well.
With that said, the intent was to go a few months, and we end up selecting two new firms to do both maintenance and target marketing with the website. We're going to take a different procedure, as Lou just mentioned, do our due diligence, to go through an RFP process. So we need to then, what we want to do is extend our contracts with these two vendors, one that provides maintenance, the other that provides marketing for the website, and do a 9-month that takes us to May, which is when we believe we'll have the new or re-engage the current firm to take over maintenance and marketing of the site. So we'll need two because we use two separate vendors. We're going to need then, they are both budgeted items, so that's not the issue. We just want to do a contract with them rather than going month to month. So based on the timeline, we will not be in a position to engage a new firm to do website marketing and management. We will need, again, two motions. One, we need a motion for the chair to sign a contract with Pursuit of Happiness, also does business as Ever Wonder Network, for the website server, hosting, and website maintenance. Total agreement will not exceed $15,550. Mr. Pitt, can I do both at the same time, or should we want to? Okay.
Yeah, so there are two motions that we need to move about for authorizing the chair to enter into contract agreements. As Rich just said, a motion to extend the contract with Pursuit of Happiness for $15,500, as well as a motion to extend the agreement with Amy Consiglio of Yum Yum Joy LLC for targeted media. That agreement would not exceed $31,500. So I need a motion for the chair to authorize or to execute those two agreements. I get a motion? CJ Johnson, and a second. Kelly Brown.
One thing I'd comment is we intentionally didn't want to go month to month because that generally implies that either party could cancel in 30 days time. And we wouldn't want to be left cold if they knew we had an RFP out there and they decided to dump us, so to speak. So contract would be a good thing to know we have through May.
And this is just an extension of the existing terms and agreements that we have. It's just a date change.
Correct, Mr. Chairman.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. A question.
Absolutely, Ms.
That
Sutton.
timeline, is that pretty much set in stone? The timeline for the review?
Well,
RFP review?
I mean, this group, we welcome any recommendation if there's a reason this timeline doesn't work, if you have some
It sounds
thoughts.
like it was happening during the holidays.
We actually kind of intentionally spread it out so that it wouldn't be too weighted toward the holidays. I think in the marketing committee would only meet in November and then not again until after that. And while we are getting, I see what you're saying with the January 30th deadline, that a lot of them might not work on it, but
Coming from that background, a lot of top or creative people are not going to be there at that time to maybe really participate the way we would want them to.
I
There'd be a lot of junior people left behind. That was only what my concern was. Around that holiday time in the advertising industry, a lot of people are gone.
Yeah, I think that's great. And let's finish up the business of the extension. And then I think as we give some direction to the marketing committee about reviewing that calendar, I think that's great guidance for Lou as he leads that team to make sure that we don't let the holiday impede. But so if you could hold the thought so we can, because I think that's separate from the extension of these two contracts.
Apologies, yeah.
But no, I think that's a great point. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor of authorizing the chair to extend these two contracts, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None? Thank you very much for that. I'll go back to that question. Ms. Suggs, if you want to ask it again, or if Lou and Marquita want to talk about that calendar a little bit, and maybe it's more geared toward the marketing meeting in November.
Yeah.
But I think it's really good guidance.
I think we discussed it in our meeting and felt that, in that industry, people also, I don't think we're some abstract, completely different thing. A lot of the vendors that we'll be considering work with other tourism development authorities and with similar type of customers, and that 60 days to pull the proposal together would be adequate. But I mean, do you have any feelings different than that? We did discuss that, and we did discuss the holidays.
But
Item 2 for the marketing committee to have input. Traditionally, the RFP for something like this for this group, as Lou was saying, is about 30 days. So that's how we factored in the additional 30 days for that RFP process because of Thanksgiving, because of the holidays. So.
And we did talk about it, Dana, to the extent that look at it from an aggregate perspective. From now until May, we believe we can get this all accomplished. We may have to push back some things over those holidays. Your point's well taken, but I think in the aggregate, the length of time that we have designated, we would need to make the transition, I think should be more than enough. We basically have 5 months after the first of the year to complete the process.
But I'll bring your point back to the marketing committee, because I mean, if we went till February 15th, that would be another 2 weeks at least, or something like that.
so the RFP is going to go out in December. The submissions are due right now at the end of January.
Correct.
Okay.
Early December.
Yeah.
So,
Great observation. Thank you for that.
yeah, thank you, Dana.
All right, completed. Now I can officially say, Mr. President, your report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon. About 2 weeks ago, we received our annual numbers or visitor spending numbers, economic impact numbers from the state of North Carolina. If you remember, every year, North Carolina engages a division of Oxford Economics out of Philadelphia. They're called Tourism Economics, along with the U.S. Travel Association, and together using input-outputs economic development software, they go through the state and come back to us with what the economic impact and spending numbers were for each county in North Carolina and for North Carolina as a whole. We're going to go through an array of slides with all types of numbers. I just want you to keep in mind that everything I'm going to show you going forward are all calendar year numbers. It's calendar year to calendar year. That's how Star Report works. That's how the state records their number. We do a lot of fiscal as it relates to our budgeting, but this will all be calendar year. And really, we're going to show you the impact that the pandemic had on Winston-Salem, Forsyth County, as a whole, the impact it has had on other cities like ours around the state, and which obviously will not be an enjoyable presentation, but I can assure you when we're coming out of this thus far, we are definitely going in a very positive direction. The other thing this will also speak to, it will reinforce the research we were sharing with the board for the last 18 months about visitor travel habits, trying to get away from urban areas, crowded areas, going to the mountains and going to the coast and things like that. You will see that so readily in the numbers. The bottom line is the urban areas were crushed. coast and mountains actually, in some cases, did better in 20 than they did in 19. So with that said, let's look at the next slide. This is visitor spending of visitors coming to Forsyth County, coming to the state on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side, visitor spending for 2020 and the last few years. We could go back 5 or 6 years even further, but we were seeing anywhere from a 5, 6, 7% increase in visitor spending every year in Winston-Salem, Forsyth County. Calendar year 2020, we saw, as you can see, a reduction of 47% compared to 2019. So visitor spending in the community was down 47% compared to the year prior. So we took obviously a huge hit in terms of tourism, you know, and that's large part when obviously when you have a no mask gathering executive order, you see the toll of what happened. So that really isn't a surprise. I don't think anyone here, we had always talked about our money, our resources were down roughly 50%. And you can see that that's in part keeping with this number, which is about 47%. It also had an impact, obviously, on tax collections in the state and in the county. There again, we saw tax collections, state and local tax collections from visitor spending was increasing about 4 or 5% a year. Even prior to 2017, since if you will, the recession, we were gaining back at a nice level. In 2020, tax receipts were down 40% from visitor spending in Forsyth County and the state. It's roughly $20 million less to the, or $20 million less to the county, but 28 million less to the state. Pardon me. To some extent, that impact wasn't fully impacted, or you didn't feel a full impact of it, because in large part the federal government was actually, you know, obviously generating resources and providing funding to state and local economies and then municipalities. But there was truly a loss in tax receipts as it relates to visitor spending. Okay, so how did we fare, if you were looking at other cities around North Carolina? This is interesting. The far column is the percentage of, if you will, lost visitor spending compared to 19 to 2020, the number I just showed you. Obviously, the largest urban hub in the state was hit the most, loss of spending of 51%. Followed by Durham, followed by Greensboro, followed by Winston-Salem. You see us there at 47%, followed by Raleigh. And look what happens. Then you look at Asheville, which is, and Wilmington. Wilmington is a great example of kind of a hybrid. Yes, they have corporate base, they have convention and meetings business, but they also have the beach. So they were hurt, but not to the extent as, if you will, the urban hubs above them. Go down even further. Look at the Outer Banks. Nag Head is actually Outer Banks, and then I just grabbed one county on the west in the mountains, Roaring Gap area, 4%. Really no impact or a positive impact in visitor spending in those counties. I can assure you, and I went through all 100 counties, the mountains all were either equal to or far better than what anyone in the middle of the state. The urban middle part of North Carolina was obviously impacted the most. Charlotte the most, you know, one, they're a big box convention center destination and the corporate transient business. Between those two things, it really is what hurt them the most. So again, it's what we heard through the research. People, when they were going to go away, they were going to go to mountains and beaches and stay away from people, stay away from urban hubs. And that's, the numbers show that clearly, that's exactly what happened. We had a meeting this morning, a Zoom meeting, Marquita and I were on, with those cities right there, Charlotte, Durham, Greensboro, Winston-Salem, and Raleigh, with the state, with the Visit North Carolina team, specifically talking about this, this occurrence. We're working with them to see what we can do to get some additional assistance from state visitor tourism tourism dollars to push a little bit harder the urban destinations in North Carolina. That the beaches and the coast and the mountains are extremely important. But how do we begin to change the brand and the brand identity of North Carolina to make sure people realize that we have urban areas you can visit and they're open and provide a safe environment for people to meet too. So we're again looking for some help from Visit North Carolina to see what they can do in terms of helping us with that. But it's clearly it reinforces really what happened in 2020 when people can't travel, can't meet, and conventions and corporate transient businesses obviously was affected. Corporate transient is still the biggest problem area. The weekends have we continue to do well, and you'll see that in our numbers as we go along. But that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday night, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday night corporate travel is not back, and that's across all urban areas in the country. It's not unique for us, but it's something that we've got to figure out on how to, one, get that back, but also how do we fill in until that comes back. I'm going to shift now and just look at demand. I used hotel occupancy as a measurement for demand. What was demand like in 19 before the pandemic? What happened during the pandemic? And then how are we coming out of the pandemic? And this is through September of this year, calendar year 21. How are we coming out of the pandemic, if you will, based on occupancy, so based on demand? You can see Greenville, South Carolina, I added to the mix. They actually, you'll see they're coming out of it. Their occupancy now is better than anyone else, but in part, remember, South Carolina has always been more open than North Carolina. You see some of that right now in those numbers, obviously. State was more open, less restrictions on travel. They seem to be, their occupancy and demand is up compared to the North Carolina states and Virginia state. But looking at this, you know, we ran 63% occupancy in 2019. We dipped down to 38%, so a 39% drop in occupancy or in demand into the COVID year. Thus far through September, we're up to 54% occupancy, which is about a 42% increase. Actually, our increase is leading the other comparables on this list. Some of that is scale. We just keep in mind, obviously, you have cities like Charlotte and much smaller cities like Winston. But by and large, Christian and I went through these numbers extensively, and I will tell you, don't get overly caught up in someone's 30%, someone's 42%. Look at it really from a more bigger picture. We all relatively, those cities are all comparables. Our occupancies are relatively close in 19. We all took similar hits as urban areas in 20, and we're all, the point is we're all coming out of it anywhere from 20 to 40% in terms of how much we've come back compared to how far down we were. So we're definitely moving in the right direction. With that said, now I went from demand to specifically just hotel revenue. Okay. You saw 17, 18, 19. We were growing 6-7%, and even going further back, 6-7% a year in hotel revenue in Forsyth County. You saw what happened in 2020. Okay. Hotel revenue ended up around $57 million, which was a decrease of about 50%. So hotel revenue in the pandemic year was down 50% over the prior year. Hence, our budget was obviously reflected in our budget. You can see, though, coming out of it in 2021, through September, we've already surpassed hotel revenue from all of last year. So obviously a positive sign. Christian, we went through the numbers. If I had to guess, really, I think we'll probably come in closer to about $90 million this year in terms of how we would be forecasting when we end the year. So we're definitely going back in the right direction as it relates to where we were. We're still going to be obviously behind 19, but definitely we're seeing a lot of improvement. Okay. Then I took specifically the TDA's percentage of the occupancy tax and tracked it each month this calendar year. That's the yellow line bar line there, compared to 19, which is the red, if you will, the burgundy, and compared to obviously 19, which is the green. You actually see in June, we actually did better than 2019, but that's an anomaly. It's something called the furniture market. It just shows you the impact the market has on our occupancy tax collections. I mean, that's the only really difference in June of 21 and 19 is furniture market, and it's pretty obviously the impact it has. But you can see where the occupancy tax collections are going. You can see right as they started going up, January, February, as people are getting vaccinated, keep climbing up. All of a sudden, after June, we have the variant hit. You see the dip down. And I think you can see if September, we don't have, do I have September on here? No.
We don't have September.
I don't have September.
September hasn't come through yet, but September would be sitting just under that red dot there.
Yeah.
So just below, it's pretty comparable. So you really just saw the spike in June, mostly because of the furniture market, but also some large outdoor youth events that we had sports-wise that really made that spike. And then you can see where it's kind of leveled off, just in between 300 and 350,000 monthly. So it's been pretty solid, pretty consistent throughout the last couple of months.
Any early indications on how fall market was?
We don't have the numbers yet, Jeff, but I can tell you a conversation I had with their president a few weeks ago. They were going into this market with a 10% increase in attendance over last market, the fall market, spring market. So I think they were confident. Still, generally speaking, mostly all US and some Canadian, but this is the first time they've actually had some international in. Some of them actually from Asia had to go to, I want to say Mexico, and had to quarantine, and then they were shipped, believe it or not, from there to here. So there was some international attendance at this market. Again, doing some quarantine things that they had to do so I'm cautiously optimistic the numbers will be strong.
I've seen the crowd.
Yeah.
And I think from a hotelier's perspective,
Yeah, these guys can answer.
I think October was a very busy month for a lot of reasons. So
I would second that. I mean, I think if you look at kind of the normalcy of this chart, October is about as normal as you're going to get with all the activity we've had. We've had a lot of university-related activities. We've seen, a lot of visitors coming in for that, whether it's homecoming this weekend with Winston-Salem State, or previously family weekend at Wake, or homecoming at the end of the month at Wake Forest as well. Furniture market. We also have conventions, as you probably saw walking through the convention center here. They're getting ready to get started here later this week. So, and then we've got sports, youth travel coming in this month as well. So we're really hitting all the segments, with the exception maybe of that corporate business that we talked about already this month. So historically, October is our strongest month out of the year. And we certainly feel like that's going to be the case here in 2021 as well.
Kelly?
Yes, they are.
Who is?
Wake Forest football.
Oh yeah, they keep winning, man.
Well, it helps. It's one of those, October got a parents' weekend and a homecoming in it, which, unfortunately that won't necessarily repeat itself, but yes. Kelly?
I was curious to know if the data dives deeper to identify what portion of the business that's still missing, or the occupancy that's still missing, is directly related to either like local corporate generation or business travel generation. And as we think about recovery and look at recovery, do we see even potential upside, understanding that maybe those in our own backyard are contributing more to the current occupancy growth than they did pre-pandemic.
In part, Mr. Owens can maybe address that to some extent when he addresses the board, but we had a conversation about that today too with the urban peer cities in North Carolina. You know, the Visit North Carolina is connected to the Economic Partnership of North Carolina, Chris Chang's organization. So economic development in the state and tourism really share offices. They have a shared mission and work together. And part of the conversation is how do we get, if you will, corporate North Carolina back on the road, if you will, back traveling, back meeting, back doing business in North Carolina. Many of the companies, especially the big ones, we heard today, you know, Wells Fargo, the big banks are still not back in the office in North Carolina and locally. That's a concern when businesses are not back meeting yet, or even working together yet. So I think it's going to be a struggle to get that corporate transient back, Kelly. I think we want to lean on the State Economic Development Authority. We want to lean on Visit North Carolina. We want to lean on our economic development organizations in Winston-Salem. How can we encourage businesses to go back in the office, and how do we encourage them to go back on the road and back travel and back doing business? We're open to suggestions on how that happens, and maybe it is some type of a collaborative effort between us and Mark's organization to try to get companies locally to back traveling again and back meeting again.
So while I want to trust and have faith in the growth numbers over the prior year, I wonder how much of that gap is truly the business travel coming back, or is it just still the leisure piece, bolstered?
Well, I think it's a great point. I think the fear that I think in my head is we've got this growth in the leisure, the local destination travel. When travel opens up more, are people going to travel farther as opposed to staying local?
Right.
That's my, as we continue to see weekend, but I wish I knew the answer to the corporate weekday stuff. It impacts you more than it impacts me. But as I still see offices on campus still closed, and the couple of office buildings we have in our portfolio, there's still lights turned off.
Right.
So I don't know how do you market that and drive that is an interesting question.
But it is encouraging growth.
Okay. One more slide of numbers, I promise. And then this is the PACE report, an update. It hasn't changed greatly. I'm going to let Christian address it, please.
Sure, happy to. We share this chart with you, this information with you every quarter and kind of see how things look. I think as you look at the different years, this is where we would sit going into the fourth quarter of the calendar year for each of the respective years. Obviously, we're not at the same levels in terms of having room nights on the books as we did prior to COVID, certainly ahead of where we were last year at this time. Part of that, again, Rich has mentioned, is the mass gathering restrictions we were facing last year. So all the room nights in the fourth quarter, really small meetings in 2020 for sports groups, soccer tournaments, lacrosse tournaments, things like that. In 21, we obviously have some conventions. We've got some sports groups. So it's a better mix of business as we go into the last 3 months of this year. Moving ahead, it actually has evened up relatively well. And I triple checked the numbers, as I'm sure you would assume I would, when I saw the 10,377 on there multiple times, but that's actually correct. So it just speaks to how evenly matched it is in future years. And Some of that is repeat groups that are coming back again, and some of that is groups that have transitioned that were supposed to meet in 2020 or 2021 during COVID that have pushed out to future years. All in all, a little more room nights than we had on the books last year at this time. Still working towards, numbers in 18 and 19. And I think a big part of what we're facing, which is what I'm sure you're facing on the hotel side as well, is there's just a hesitancy in making a decision and kind of waiting to see how things kind of shake out. And then for those larger conventions, they're already having conversations about if it was a 1,000-person meeting that they're planning for 22, do they think they're going to have 1,000 people in 22? Do they shift that down to 800 or 700 and be safe with the idea that they can then increase it as it gets closer, depending on what happens within their individual associations with them? But that's just kind of a brief overview on where we sit with the PACE report.
Thanks, Christian. And getting back to Kelly's point to some extent, the group stuff is coming back, but we still don't know for sure to what level it's going to come back. But we thus far we are moving. The pandemic and variances aside, we're definitely moving in the right direction. We're seeing a lot more inquiries come in, not only from leisure, but also from the convention activity. All our normal convention trade shows with customers and customer interaction we have are all back, and none of them are hybrid. Every meeting we go to meet with customers, we're live and in person. So I think there's some positive signs there. I never thought I know we're still down. I never thought I would give a presentation to a board, say, well, we're only down 30% and I'd still have a job. But we're experiencing the same thing that urban areas are experiencing everywhere. I think the renovation and of what we did with the Benton space, Benton South, gives us more elbow room in the building that's sellable. I think that's going to help us. Sports stuff is still on the radar. I know that doesn't make up for the during the week corporate high-end stuff that we all went back to. We'll with the hotels and hopefully with the state, Kelly, we'll figure out a way to, and with economic development leaders, we'll figure out a way to get corporate travelers back moving around. But I know that's going to be a harder one than how do we get more convention business or leisure business here. Okay. If there's no other question, I'm going to I'd like to ask Mark Owens, the president of the Greater Winston-Salem, Inc. I think everyone knows Mark. Mark has been here a few years now. What, 2 years? 4. Oh, Jesus. 4. Okay, 4. But we have really created a great bond and working relationship with the economic development organization, both, and I think very much we're on the same page and in concert. We understand, I think Mark understands how important tourism and tourism spending is to our community and the tax base. At the same time, we understand that more businesses we have here and business expansion is going to mean more hotels getting filled, more corporate meetings. We basically do the same thing, slightly different missions, but we're trying to create economic and grow economic vitality for Forsyth County and Winston-Salem. And I've asked Mark to join us today, just if you would give us a quick update on some of the projects and some of the things that he sees going on in Winston-Salem from an economic development standpoint, and how he sees community getting out of the, if you will, getting beyond the pandemic as well. And maybe if Marquis, if you can just.
Winston can hear me as well, so I'll stand up.
No, actually, you want to use a mic. I think that will help for Commissioner Wisenhunt.
You can stand on center stage with a microphone. Is this a weekend act or a weekday act?
Yes to both. Yes. Karaoke comes out next. No, it's great to see everybody. And Rich, thank you. And I'm going to do a presentation. I learned in my 4 years, Rich, even though 2 of them have been hunkered down for COVID, that sometimes you have media present. So I didn't want to use the slideshow so I could share a little more in depth with you verbally than normally showing the screen. But it's great to be with you. I wanted to just give you a quick update on the economic piece. Kelly, I may help try to answer your question, provide some input back into that as well, and then happy to answer any questions first. Thank you, Councilmember McIntosh and Commissioner Wisenhunt, for your partnership on economic development as well. I think that's something that we have learned through our pandemic. And what I would like to say quickly is Greater Winston-Salem Inc. was merged and formed in 2019 with no idea that this was happening. And really that's turned out to be a really fortunate decision that we've been able to push through and have one organized voice around economic development, as well as one set of resources and one set of liabilities to handle through that process. And it's been really robust and strong. It also, through COVID, I think has pulled us as a community closer. You know, getting to go see Ms. Suggs' store and us highlighting our local businesses, it reminded us of the importance of shopping and buying local. And that's been a big piece to that. And to Rich's point, we are connected in so many different ways. And as we look at the tax base, and I see Ben's here from the city finance budget team, our goal hopefully is to help it be the best environment to operate a business. And that also includes tax rates and tax fees. So the more spending, investor spending that comes, tourism spending that comes into our market, helps drive our economy, promotes jobs. It also helps add tax revenue that hopefully doesn't have to be passed on to our corporations and our community as well. So it's all tied together. And before I jump into our quick report, Marquita and Christian and y'all's teams, we've built a really good relationship across our teams and our marketing side as well. If you missed it, we had a joint feature in Business North Carolina together, and we've been really focused on the peer cities. We benchmark against many of the same peer cities and are learning ways to do that even better. And Rich and I get to get together a little bit, and we get to lean on elected officials and talk with them and share our ideas and continue to rally our community together. So from the economic development front, a lot of our effort has been on trying to help our local business community, but at the same time, we started on our recruiting efforts. So I'm gonna reference a slide here just so I get my numbers exactly right for you. Pre-COVID, when we did merge, before we got all the way up and running, we averaged 12 to 14 active economic development projects a month. So 12 to 14 inquiries into Greater Winston-Salem Inc., which is Forsyth County and the city. Right now, as of this morning, we had 64 active projects in our pipeline. We are having to grow our capacity on a staff. We are growing and getting the word out. I'll share how we do that a little bit. But 64 active projects. We're averaging about 3 projects a week, most of which are between the 100 to 500 job sweet spot that we really believe we can go after and do really strong. Currently, we have 10 of those projects are in the on-site visit stage. We have another 8 of those that are in due diligence stage on a piece of property already at this point. So we look at our funnel from initial RFIs down to visits to due diligence to announcements. And so we're really excited to see that it's not just initial inquiries, that we're getting people through that sales pipeline. Hopefully they can make a decision. The convention business about decision making is mirroring what we're seeing in economic development. We always use the word pause. People are pausing their decisions. They're not stopping them, but they're putting them on hold or hitting pause for a little while. But we're starting to see those ramp up. The summer and fall specifically have skyrocketed. We went from 40 active projects to 64 in the last month and a half. And a lot of that is a desire by many of these clients to have a decision made by the end of the calendar year or prepared to make that decision in the first quarter of next year, knowing that construction prices are fluctuating all over the place and current delivery of a building construction on the industrial market is about 2 years. So they're planning ahead into that space. One of the areas that I really want to focus on, we normally have, 2 months ago, we had 2 biotech life science projects. Today, we have 11 biotech life science projects. Most of that is directly contributed to Dr. Atala in regenerative medicine, as well as Javara clinical trials. Both entities a major draw to our community, and they're companies that want to come and be close to those businesses. And obviously the life sciences is a very top of mind topic on a regular day. And we are well positioned with Innovation Quarter in our overall market for that. The current pipeline alone represents 7,500 jobs and $4.2 billion in capital investment. Let's be clear, we're not going to win all of those projects, but we do track the pipeline. And some numbers that I wanted to share, the Winston-Salem Forsyth County market, in conjunction with our partners in Greensboro and High Point, we were the second most pitched market in the state for economic development projects over the last year, only trailing Charlotte. So companies are looking at our region here, and we're getting more inquiries from the state EDP&C, where about 83% of all inquiries into the state of North Carolina are coming to our region. The ones that are considering our region, Winston-Salem specifically, 85% of those projects are looking at Winston-Salem. So that deal flow and that pipeline is strong, and we're measuring that and using data similar to what Rich showed to make sure we're tracking that. And my favorite number is this year to date, we have announced 488 new jobs and $296 million in capital investment. Not all of those even had incentives, Councilman McIntosh and Commissioner Wisenhunt. Some of those were not even incentives. I know Ms. Wisenhunt would be proud of that one for sure. So we are really thrilled about the growth that we're seeing. Some of that is local companies like Garner Foods, better known for Texas Pete, expanding and continuing to grow. Nature's Value, a headquarter move out in New York, 270 jobs coming to Whitaker Park. And hopefully we'll have a nice announcement coming to our elected officials, a project over 200 jobs coming by the end of the year. We're really thrilled about. So our goal is to have 5,000 new jobs by 2030, and we're on track for that. And we're also making sure we retain the new jobs that are coming to us. One of the real quick ones, I have to tell a quick story, Rich, not to go too long, but the importance of the tourism, travel, hospitality industry is on display when it comes to economic development in a project that we call Project Jacobs. And I have to share this quick story. This company is from the Northeast, Connecticut, which I learned, whatever that phrase is, Kelly, that people from Connecticut call themselves. But what is it?
Nutmeggers.
Nutmeggers. So I learned that from somebody from Connecticut. They had a great stay, stayed at the Kimpton. We didn't arrange that. They chose their location. But this individual, the company here, loved walking Trade Street, was sitting at Mellow Mushroom outside, engaged a police officer in a conversation about safety, about race, about diversity in our community. The police officer had an amazing 30-minute conversation with the company representative. The next day, the company representative is leaving the building they're looking at. Police car pulls up, rolls the window down and yells out, "Hey, Alex." And they connect again. And this gentleman from Connecticut, they know my name and like people will wave to me and wants to talk. He loved it. And so we made the top list and are down the line in that consideration. So why Project Jacobs? Sometimes these projects have no meaning to the name, but the officer's name is Sergeant Jacobs. So we named the project after that officer who made such an impact on that company. But them walking to Trade Street, having a good meal downtown, having a wonderful stay. We took them to breakfast at Young Cardinal. That is what sold them. Yes, the building is helpful, but the feeling they got when they were here traveling was something they said, we're going to come back and hopefully continue to bring other people. So I wanted to share that really quickly. And then last, I just wanted to highlight from the economic development perspective, tech talent is an issue that we're facing. We have a new tech talent fund where you can have $5,000 a job if you need help recruiting a tech talent person to your company. So that's a new fund. We have a $1.25 million MBE grant program that was all raised by private dollars that are really helping our small business in our community continue to get through COVID. So our goal is to really help our small businesses all the way to recruiting new ones. So it's been a busy time, much like the TDA, funding is a challenge. We always talk about our organizations are needed the most in troubling times, but it's not easy when your funding model is always tied to the amount of people staying and spending money. But we're there working our mission and we're really excited about where we're going. And with the partnership with the Visit Winston-Salem, LinkedIn, for example, Facebook, and our Google ads, our team works with Marquita and her team to identify different markets, How do our messages tie over? How do we now try to see who's here on a convention, has a great time, get them to open a second location or third location in Winston-Salem, Forsyth County at the end? And I'll close by, Kelly, just saying to your question, our board, for example, 1/3 of our companies on our board still have a no in-person meeting mandate from their corporation. We're not doing in-person meetings yet because 1/3 of our board can't go to them, do the mandates from their companies. Masked, unmasked, inside, outside, doesn't matter. The only one we've actually gotten around a little bit is on the golf course. And I don't know how we've done that, but every once in a while we can get around it that way. Some of which Bank of America can't even do that. That's a challenge. So I think wanted to just say that, as Rich mentioned, I know that Reynolds American is back in the office fully as of Monday. So hopefully you'll see those individuals with their badges, shopping, eating, dining in downtown. But I think the biggest challenge that we're seeing from the corporate side in any of our conversations that Rich and I talk about is the threat of Zoom. And that one night trip to have a 1-hour meeting can be done on Zoom. And how do we combat and get back to that feeling of making the deal and shaking the hand, being in person is crucial for that relationship. And I think that Zoom element is going to be a big challenge for the quick trips. I think we're seeing people that want to get together. I believe we have the Charlotte City Council potentially coming in town to next Monday to do their planning here in Winston-Salem, which press will be there. And I'm so thrilled because they need to come learn from us because we're doing it right. But what I'm saying is that I think the Zoom meetings we're seeing are replacing some of those shorter travel pieces. So that is a concern of ours. And hopefully that, you know, a 2 or 3 day meeting, people will want to come and do that in person. That 1 hour to 2 hour meeting that you may have traveled for before, I'm not sure that is going to be as optimistic around. So Rich and Mr. Chair, I apologize, maybe sharing a little too much and going long, but it's been a great partnership. We continue to do that more and more in our marketing efforts and our messaging efforts, and they're aligned. Anybody that says that travel tourism industry and the economic development aren't aligned, it's not right. They have to be in lockstep, and we're working hard on that. So happy to answer any questions or allow you to get back to your agenda.
I appreciate your time, and I appreciate in particular sharing the story of Officer Jacobs, because that is hospitality at its core.
Gloria's got a question, Mr. Chairman.
Gloria, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Mark, I just want to say that you have taken our economic development to a whole new level, and I am so proud of the work you've done. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner.
So,
Thank you.
So Councilmember McIntosh and Ben Rowe, if you can somehow get that back to city police and the chief and all of that. Everybody makes a difference every day in what we do and our attitude toward our city and our mission. So that's a shining example. I appreciate you naming the project after him. That's a wonderful thing.
Absolutely, Mr. Chair, just to let you know, Chief Thompson, Assistant Chief Weaver know we presented to the mayor and council members
Awesome.
the reason, and hopefully if we get it across the finish line, Officer Jacobs will be there to cut the ribbon.
That'd be awesome.
Great.
Awesome. Great.
That's a great story. Thank you, Mark. With that said, I'm going to ask our guys to kind of want to kind of wrap up quickly because we will be over an hour. And I do want to let you know that that Grant is here. To anyone that wants to do a walkthrough downstairs and see the new space, I think the renovation is relatively done. Most of the artwork's up, but it's extremely impressive and a great opportunity. And again, thanks to Grant for kind of helping us get through that. And of course to Councilman McIntosh and Mr. Rao, who really drove this thing home for us. Thank you. With that, I'm going to turn over to Christian and then Marquita.
Yeah, just real quick, and I think, thank you, Emily, for emailing out the PowerPoint before the meeting today. I think if you had an opportunity to peruse that, as Rich mentioned, all of the client events that we're going to, all of the appointments, all the shows we're going to currently are appointment shows, and those are all in person. So you see that we've done that since our last meeting in a variety of different markets. the sports market, the convention, meeting planning market. And then we're also next week going to another sports show and a sports ETA and Connect Faith, which is a faith-based show, as well as the Association of Executives of North Carolina. So some things on the horizon as we kind of finish the month strong here in October. And then we'll have some more client events as we wrap up the year in December with the annual AE&C trade show will be our largest trade show that we go to every year in state for those state association planners. So I will quickly turn it over to Marquita.
Thank you, Christian. Just real quick, wanted to update everybody. This is in particular interest to hoteliers. It was in our last issue of News and Notes, as well as a special email that was blasted out to the hotel DOSs, GMs, and marketing. And the Flip 2 is a partnership with Visit North Carolina. It is a high-tech software platform that actually is like no other in that it does three things. It collaborates and brings together three elements that have never been actually bonded together that are so important. One is actually a social media component, the curation and conversation and the advocacy part of social media with people who are looking at a destination for an overnight vacation experience. When they come to our site, that's where the bond starts. That's where the conversation starts. It also takes that data of that contact person and it reconnects with them in a very organic and branded way. Again, Flip 2 works with the DMO through the hotels to have that branded conversation, and it retargets and has that ongoing conversation. Again, it's very intuitive and it understands that it's a family or it's a baby boomer couple that wants to have an experience, and when they're looking, and then retargets them and recontacts them at various points in the conversation process through to actual conversion as well. And that's where it helps the hoteliers come into play. We actually had, according to Flip 2, the strongest response by hoteliers. And again, they're recontacting our hotels right now. And from what I understand, Grayland is the very first one to actually come on board. So thank you very much for that. Can be a great testimonial. There are only 4 other destinations in North Carolina that Visit North Carolina has asked to be a part of this pilot program. It is a 2-year program and it is completely underwritten by Visit North Carolina. So we really appreciate that as well. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to talk about that afterwards. It's a little complicated, but it's genius all at the same time. Just to let you know, we are in the throes of actually working on the new visitor guide. As most of you know, we were not able to publish last year because of the pandemic. But again, we are talking to the publisher about this year's issue. We actually have a meeting tomorrow and have some great editorial lined up for that. Again, the Officer Jacobs is a prime example of the stories that we like to put in there. It's not just about hotels and attractions. It's about hotels, attractions, and the experience and the place and the feeling, as you were saying, Mark, the feeling that people get and the experiences that they can have in the destination. And we try to convey that through the pages of the destination magazine. So it's more than a visitor guide. I'm so glad to say that the Wine and Dine Guide is on press, and we're very excited about that because this is one of the touch points that visitors, as well as convention delegates, sports events organizers, and the participants for all of market segments enjoy. Again, we connect this to our online restaurant and Wine and Dine directory as well. So much has changed. From a marketing and communication side, wanted to just follow up with you. I think we mentioned last meeting that we were getting ready to. Well, we did successfully host Jason Fry, who is based out of Wilmington, North Carolina. He is a board member of the Society of American Travel Writers Eastern Chapter, which I'll talk about in just a moment, but is writing a travel guide that will come out in 2022. It is focused on the LGBTQ market. Also, Mr. Flood Charlotte came in. He is a travel and tourism writer for a number of different publications. He was on specific assignment and has actually started placing stories for Antique Week. He was at Mazda and Old Salem and Renolda House and Grayland and had a fantastic time and is really going to generate a number of different editorial. We will share that with you as he continues to publish, but was very excited. He did not know why he had not been to Winston-Salem before, is what he said. So we concur. So we're glad he was here. As I mentioned, Society of American Travel Writers, our awesome convention sales team was able to actually win this bid for us hosting the Society of American Travel Writers Eastern Chapter. We will have our first pre-planning meeting November 7th through the 10th, and I'm very excited about these particular folks being the committee chairs as they are all incredibly successful travel writers themselves. So it's one part meeting, one part, 2 parts site inspection, and 3 parts getting a story booked as well. So we're very excited about that. And again, that conference will bring in about 60 travel writers as well as the associate members. We hope to set a record with them, and that's in June, mid-June as well. So in the throes of that. Beginning today, we actually are working with Visit North Carolina. They reached out to us about 2 weeks ago, maybe less than that, and said that they are bringing some travel and culinary writers to the Bay Haven Food and Wine Festival in Charlotte this coming weekend. And because these 3 writers of the 6 that they're bringing in had heard so much about Winston-Salem, can you please host them too? They would really like to come up and see your culinary scene and your travel scene in Winston-Salem. So the team has quickly put together some amazing itineraries for, and there's some crossover, but there's 3 different itineraries. So there was a lot of coordination. So I'm so proud to say sweet potatoes. We've got them going to Cranky's. We've got them going to see Ebony Warfield at 6th and Vine. We've got them seeing the new chef at Hotel Indigo. And again, just a great cross section. I think Dana might be having a little breakfast with some folks tomorrow morning. Thank you very much for that as well.
Looking forward to it.
So we've got Old Salem and a little trip to Renolda House as well. So very quick paced, but a great opportunity nonetheless. We're very excited. Again, Cheryl Nance Nash is just an amazing writer, and we're very excited that she's going to be here. Obviously, the invitation has been extended to these writers for National Black Theater Festival next summer as well. Okay, we are done.
That's the staff reports, Mr. Chairman.
Great. Sarah, anything from?
No, I think we did well. All of our sections are open and operating. Some events, but all alive and good. Good for it. And hopefully, if you didn't get an invitation to my room, please let me know, because I'm not in charge of setting them up. But I hope that some of you will be able to make it. That's next Friday.
And I guess we'll catch up with 2 of you on a tour. I appreciate your hard work in getting that place a new look. Is there any other business before the board? Lou?
I like the creative new grant ideas, like Mark was talking about, like we're doing. I think we ought to look at some of this. One thing, I think the hesitancy on conferences signing up as early that I'm seeing is a lot of their sponsors and their exhibitors were like, okay, that was fun last year doing all that remotely. And in 2021, we really don't think we're getting enough out of it to do it again in 2022. And so they're not going ahead and signing up for their conference to go to a city because their sponsors and exhibitors aren't signing up early, that they would be willing to do it. And I think another big reason, I don't know what you're seeing, is that everybody's discovered it's a lot harder to unwind a convention in person than it is to set it up on the front end. But I think it'd be an interesting grant for us to do, and maybe it could involve economic development and tourism development to actually exhibit at our own conferences. If we had a grant to say, hey, if you'll bring your conference here in 2023, we'll do a booth to promote Winston-Salem and the things, the business community of Winston-Salem. particularly if it was a business-oriented conference. You know, a lot of spouses go too, that have businesses and own businesses and make decisions. But it'd be two things. It might be a little encourager, hey, sign with us, because we'll be a $3,000 sponsor of your conference, and a chance to hit that little jackpot like Officer Jacobs of talking to the right person about Winston-Salem while they're here.
Lou, you know, actually, when I was in Orlando and in Buffalo, both places, our economic development organization, depending on what convention was coming, if I understood what you were saying, depending on what convention was coming into town, we would negotiate them to have a booth there so that they could they had to agree not to obviously be too aggressive, but just to talk to anyone that may have interest in viewing whatever city we were in as a potential place to look at relocating or doing or even doing a business meeting. But the point is it depends on the group, but there are a lot of VP of marketing guys or VP of salespeople or CEOs that are coming to conventions, and how do you touch them and talk to them about potentially not only bringing their own meeting here, but looking at a location to relocate. It's so many stories you hear that the first exposure a CEO has with where I end up relocating my business because I went there as a visitor or I went there for a convention or a meeting. It's kind of trying to connect those dots that can help. And we haven't really done that here. A lot of the business we do are state meetings, but I think that if we really look at our calendar and who's coming, I don't know, there could be some opportunities to have a present there to speak to Winston-Salem as a place to do business as well. Yeah.
I promise not to be too aggressive.
No, I think that it's doable.
Leave your tripstick at home.
Yes, we'll be eye-catching, but not aggressive.
All right.
That's great. Thanks.
Anyone else?
I do have one other thing, Mr. Chairman. First, I want to thank you, John, for the chair for 2 years. And don't take this the wrong way, but you're always going to be known as the pandemic chair. You're the guy that kind of led us through.
It was 3 years.
3 years, was it 3? It seemed like 2 though, John.
How old are you? Getting older, Rich? What? You're just trying to stop the aging process.
Trying to stop the aging process, but you did a tremendous job in leading the organization, the board, through what was obviously for all of us, the most difficult time that we've all faced from a business perspective. So thank you. And I really, I'm glad obviously you're still remaining on the board and we'll continue to be counsel for me and for the board. But thank you. You did a great job and I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
I do want to make one comment with respect to the next board meeting. As you know, we don't meet in November, we meet in December. We're scheduled to meet the first Wednesday, the 8th. The challenge, which is a good one, I think, is that both Chris and I have to be in Raleigh. We have a client event. So I would think the board rather have us be with clients. So is there a way, can we do that meeting on Tuesday of that week? Do you want me to send out? Have Emily send out a note,
Save the date or
save a
check the
date and look at either is Tuesdays or Thursdays. I know Thursdays are not good for Commissioner Wisenhunt, but I thought maybe we could do that meeting on the Tuesday before 2 o'clock. Everything would be the same. So Chris and I we're hitting the Raleigh.
Is this the December 8th meeting?
Yes, I'm trying to do it on December 7th instead.
Okay.
Okay, we're going to send out a notice on that then. Thank you.
No other business. We are adjourned.
Thank you, John.